politisk. Tina Bru har en kjempeviktig jobb å ta tak i. Vi skal gå inn i det her med ansvar, og vi skal virkelig
Men da
få
skjønner
orden
jeg,
på det.
det blir ikke noe flertall for dette. Altså, det tror jeg vi kan faktisk bare konstatere. Det er ikke et flertall på Stortinget for å fryse disse sakene før de kommer opp. Greit, da går vi videre til neste tema, som jo er det store vi egentlig har diskutert her, om kommunene bør få vetorett. Er ikke det bare naturlig og logisk at de får det når inngrepet faktisk skjer i deres bakgård?
Jeg tror det er viktig å huske på i denne debatten at vi bygger jo ikke vindkraft i Norge for gøy. Man gjør det jo fordi man vil ha strøm. Det har jo vært et ønske over lang tid i Norge om å bygge ut mer fornybar energi, og det er derfor vi har hatt det rammeverket vi har hatt rundt vindkraft. Det var et bredt flertall i Stortinget.
For de som produserer til det?
Nei, selvfølgelig. Det skjønner jeg jo at ikke de vil ha de parkene. Det ser jeg jo, for å si det sånn. Men hvorfor man ikke kan ha vetorett, det er jo at det er et nasjonalt hensyn å sikre at vi har kraftutbygging. Det gjelder også vannkraft, det gjelder andre ting. Det gjelder nasjonalparker for øvrig. Altså, vi har et ansvar.
Continue à direita e depois vire à direita. Vire à direita.
Men bare sånn, egentlig også, så er det viktig at vi alle, selv om alle ser på endringer nå, og alle skjønner frustrasjonen som er der ute, men vi må også faktisk sammen som partier bære det politiske ansvaret for at vi er der vi er i dag. Fordi dette er det mange skiftende regjeringer som har lagt til rette for, og det synes jeg blir litt borte i debatten. Det betyr ikke at ikke vi kan ta til orde for endringer, gjøre ting enda bedre, ta med hensyn lokalt. Det må vi, men vi må også ta ansvaret for det vi har vært med å gjøre.
Na rotatória, pegue a segunda saída.
Selv om det paradoksalt nok kan føre til at du ikke får en eneste vindmølle som du vel egentlig vil ha, altså fordi du vil ha fornybar strøm.
Altså, jeg tror dette handler veldig mye om prosessene som har vært veldig, veldig dårlige. Det er kommuner som har sagt ja til vindkraftverk på et tidspunkt hvor de var...
Saia agora.
Nå er det blitt 2 ganger så høy, 3 ganger så høy som det som posisjonen tilsa.
Mantenha-se à direita. Na rotatória, pegue a segunda saída. Saia agora. Prepare-se para virar à esquerda. Vire à esquerda.
Masks. Welcome to News Hour from the BBC World Service. We're coming to you live from London. My name's Paul Henley. First up, after 7 days of heartfelt protests across the United States, sparked by the police killing of an unarmed black man, a memorial service for that man was always going to be an emotionally charged affair.
remember him as a man, a brother, a father, a son, and to bring to life this very ordinary man who has become a catalyst for a movement that hasn't just sparked America's imagination, but also protests and demonstrations and solidarity across the globe. And with that in mind, that was where Al Sharpton, the black activist who spoke the eulogy and we just heard there, really tried to push the conversation forward, tried to frame the question of what happens next in terms of action and in terms of determination. And he also called for a march on Washington in echoes of the historic march generated by Martin Luther King more than 50 years ago. So he was calling on action, the family and the community here in Minneapolis, an opportunity to say farewell to the man who lived here and who also met his death here.
And you're close, aren't you, to the spot where he was killed? What's the mood right there?
It's a very strange mood in that we've got the formality of this memorial and a very somber occasion, but the mood here, it's like a street party. You've got food, you've got free food being given out.
Prepare-se para virar à esquerda.
People are sitting quietly. There are people who are just coming here to lay flowers, but this has become
Vire
a
à
safe space
esquerda.
for the community where people can gather and try and process exactly what's happened here and how to harness this moment and really make a lasting change. So it's a very unexpected mood. It's not a celebration, but it's a community. It's a sense of community and a real sense of unity right here.
Are you getting the impression the protests will continue?
I think the protests will continue. It's really what form they take and to what end. I get the sense that over the last couple of days things have settled down here in Minneapolis. There haven't been the violent protests or the demonstrations that we've seen previously.
Prepare-se para virar à direita.
People were defying that curfew to still come and gather here at this makeshift memorial near the spot where George Floyd was killed. And I think that will continue. They're
Vire
still
à
laying
direita.
flowers and they still want to remember.
Jane O'Brien in Minneapolis, many thanks. Tony Williams is an activist at the forefront of the protests in Minneapolis. Tony's been out demonstrating but also coordinating behind the scenes. I asked him if things really had calmed down now.
I think they certainly are. I think the protests have really escalated up to the point where it became clear that people were not interested in police reform anymore.
Continue à
and are having
direita
to keep each
e
other
depois
safe because of
vire à
police
direita.
escalation. So we're in a very calm and safe place and beginning to
Vire
imagine what
à
a police-free
direita.
Minneapolis looks like.
And has the charging of all the officers involved in Mr. Floyd's killing helped?
Certainly not. I mean, we've seen officers charged before, and it's a small measure of accountability. But we know that charging criminal officers, even though it's happened before, hasn't stopped police brutality in
Vire
America.
à
And we believe
esquerda.
that we need to look towards transformative solutions and new ways of keeping our communities safe if we're going to move forward and prevent this from happening again. You can find more information
Aqui
about the work
termina o
we're doing on the
percurso.
ground at mpd150.com.
Okay, thank you. How important do you think the last 7 days have been in the campaign towards equality?
I think incredibly important. We've seen 3 or 4 different police killings in the Twin Cities here in America over the course of the last 5 years. And it's become clear that the traditional Black Lives Matter reform measures that we've talked about, officer diversity, de-escalation, those kinds of things aren't working. And I think the entire movement in the U.S. is moving towards talking about divesting from police, defunding police, and abolishing police.
So are reforms out of the police's hands? Surely individual officers have to start this change.
I don't think so, actually. I think the truth of the matter, when you begin to look at the history of police reform, is that all reforms are found to be either universally ineffective or they're rolled back by police power and lobbying efforts. So it becomes very clear, and again, you can find more information about the history of police reform's failure in Minneapolis at mpd150.com. But it becomes very clear, and you can see it from the amount of protests that have happened in the United States over the last 5 years, that reform actually isn't possible. And that we have to imagine bigger if we're going to make any change whatsoever.
Bigger meaning what exactly?
Bigger meaning finding alternative ways to keep our communities safe. So again, we know that crime is actually prevented and communities are kept safer when we invest in resources for our community.